I'm going to leave the meeting.
You make that joke every time, but it never gets old.
I'm glad that it doesn't get old, because you're right, I do make that joke every time.
Well, hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we record meetings and other things too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah, and I make the same joke every time we get on this call.
Well, before we jump into our literary conversation, if you can call it that, Sarah, let's start with something great that happened lately.
Something good that happened is I had tickets to go see Neil Gaiman talk because he's doing a tour. So that was 2 nights ago, and that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was it just a talk? What was the topic? Was he just pontificating about stuff?
Yeah, so he read a couple of short stories and some poems, and he answered audience questions, not direct from the audience. He solicited questions on like cardstock or whatever, index cards beforehand.
So they were moderated a little bit.
Yes.
That's good.
Which I was very thankful for, because audience questions are always the worst.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say 85% of them are fine, but then you have that other 15% that are just intolerable.
It's true.
So that was a really fun 2 hours or however long it ended up being.
Nice.
I even left my house and went into the city for it.
Oh, it's got to be something really worth it to get me out of the house.
Yep.
Especially when it's like right now where I have both cats with me.
Is that your good thing?
It's not, but I did need to say it on the record. You always have your pugs with you during recording, and this time I've got the cats. It's a blessed day.
It's true. It's not quite as special for me to have the pugs keeping me company while we record.
But my official good thing, because we're only one good thing is allowed to happen per week.
What a depressing week that would be if that was true in general.
Danny and I went thrifting yesterday, and I got a magnificent pair of pineapple pants.
Well, now, okay, apologies to all our listeners, because this is not a visual medium, but now I have to see the pineapple pants.
Yes, I mean, it's true. Okay, so they're actually shorts, but you need to have the alliteration,
It's true. And those are very pineapple-y.
Yes.
I like them.
$2. You can't pass it up. I mean, you can, but why would you want to?
It is theoretically possible.
So, yes, I am now in possession of pineapple pants, and that is my good thing.
That's a very good thing.
Oh, well, Sarah, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking white wine. I had contemplated making myself a mixed drink, but then I got lazy, so I did not.
Acceptable.
Yeah. What are you drinking tonight, Lily?
While I take a sip of it, as if I didn't know you were about to ask me that question.
You're welcome.
I am drinking the best bubbly water flavor, which is cranberry lime.
That sounds nice if you like bubbly water.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is a necessary part of the equation. But I do, and this is the best flavor.
I'm glad you have the best flavor of bubbly water to drink.
Me too. Well, since this is a book podcast and not a pineapple pants podcast, Sarah, have you read anything good lately?
Yes, I think I mentioned in our last episode that I was reading a series of novellas called Run with the Hunted. I think that's the series title.
Is that Dog Heist?
I did mention last time that there was a dog heist, and I got to the dog heist book.
Good.
So I read the dog heist. It was every bit as dog heisty as I was promised. I was very pleased. The dog does not suffer whatsoever. It has a very happy ending. It was great. I loved it.
Moment of appreciation for the website doesthedogdie.com. Only tangentially related to what you just said, but they provide an extraordinary service.
Deserving of praise, yes. Should I ask if you've read anything?
I have not. I have been too busy jumping on the Our Flag Means Death bandwagon.
Valid.
Watched it. It was good. Did not spend my time doing any reading.
Valid.
Oh, that's not true, though, because I did read Saint Death's Daughter, by C.S.E. Cooney. Is that her name?
That is her name.
Oh, good. I should probably look at these to refresh my memory before we start recording instead of winging it.
Just maybe, or we could add the author to our show notes.
But that would be smart and resourceful.
No one's ever accused us of being either of those things.
It's true. But did read that. In fact, it was extremely good.
Yeah, we got advance copies. The book is already out by now. So our advance copies are no longer advance. But we did get advance copies from the publisher. And I was really glad because this was a fantastic book.
I think this was one that we were like, hell yeah, let's read it based entirely off of the cover.
I first was interested in it because it has just an incredible cover. I love the way that the flowers and the figure and the text all come together.
That was an extraordinary pug snarl.
Yes. Mr. Squeak is she's on her back, but she wants to play. So she's making noises.
I just felt like that needed to be addressed because there's no way I'm going to be able to cut that out.
But yeah, so we saw the cover first, and then when we read the synopsis, I think we're like, hell yeah, let's read this. And then because it's us, we didn't actually put it on the calendar in time to coincide with the release date. I think by that point, we had already scheduled out our calendar far enough that we would have to rearrange things.
Well, we got there in the end.
We did. We're not that far off. It only came out last month.
Now, I'm guessing that the back of the book that we have is not the one that is published.
Yeah, I suspect that the proper blurb on the back or synopsis on the back is longer. This just says, life gets complicated when death gets involved. A necromancer with an allergy to violence must negotiate her way to adulthood, including dangerous parties, assassinations, politics, and romance. And when I read that, I definitely thought that the allergy to violence was not an actual literal allergy. So that was I
also wouldn't call what she goes through an allergy. When she's near violence, she also experiences it. Or when even someone recounts violence, she physically experiences it.
I mean, I think
is fascinating and very cool, but not exactly an allergy.
I think you could make the argument that it's an allergy. She's having a physical reaction to,
proximity.
Pollen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Violence pollen.
Violence pollen. But yeah, I definitely did not think that it was literal. And so that was fun. And I think set a really fun tone for the book.
I think that's a really perfect example of the humor in this book, because it's not haha slapstick, but there are just some very wry, circumstantial jokes, like necromancers being allergic to death or violence, and all of the footnotes that describe how the main character's ancestors have died over the generations. They're just absurd.
In a way, I would say that the humor really reminds me of Terry Pratchett and how he uses kind of wry observational humor.
I could see that. This book is a lot darker, and I think uses it with a lighter touch than Pratchett does.
Right.
But
it's not exactly the same, but I think it's similar in vein.
Yeah, I can see that. So does it bother you that all of the mouse skeleton graphics have ears?
Does it bother me that
Because
where they're I guess they do have ears, don't they? But how are you supposed to know that it's a mouse if it doesn't have ears?
Because she has mouse skeleton friends. What else would it be?
Yeah, but you don't know that if you're just picking up the back of the book.
I guess.
I mean, yes.
You didn't notice it, but if you had noticed it.
I didn't notice it. I did not notice it at all.
Well, the mice skeletons are adorable, though.
They are. I loved the bones in this, but there are so many bones and it just made me happy. I feel like that's a weird sentence to say, but it's true.
I think given the material in the book, it's actually very fitting. It is a very interesting mix of dark and light, I guess. Silly.
I mean, there's a lot of horrifying stuff that happens. not necessarily in terms of killing, although there's some of that too, but personal relationships.
Yeah.
Like the relationship that Lainey's sister has with her husband is, rape. It's coercion.
Oh, mind control is one of the just like scariest concepts. How is that? Okay, there are different kinds of magic in this book. Lainey, the main character, is a necromancer. Her older sister has the power of charm. That's not the word. Compulsion.
Fascination.
Is that what they call it? Fascination, I think.
I think so.
Which just like as a concept, I feel like isn't really addressed in the book. I guess everyone who has that power is a bad guy. So maybe it's just implied that power is inherently disgusting.
Yeah, you're right. It's not explicitly talked about.
Like the book doesn't actually address how horrifying that is.
The book also doesn't address some of the really horrifying aspects of Lainey's relationship with the rest of her family either.
I think it does, though. Lainey definitely doesn't think she has a good relationship with them. So it's not trying to claim that that's all fine and hunky-dory.
No, but in the same way, it doesn't really try to claim that Mac's relationship with Nita is hunky-dory. I don't know.
It definitely says, like, the ways that they use the fascination are fucked up.
Yeah.
I think it definitely gets that across, right? Because Mac is so pissed off about it, rightfully so. Like, it's not exactly marriage, but in a committed relationship, magically bonded, committed relationship that she just yanks him away from and he can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really horrifying.
Nita, the older sister, just really bothered me in general. And obviously she's supposed to. But
she's not a good character or a good person. I didn't pick up on that.
She has apparently tormented Lainey her entire life. We don't see a ton of, we only see her coming home.
Lainey describes a lot of their childhood interactions.
Yeah.
But we don't see that firsthand. We only see their interactions as adults. I don't know how old Lainey's not actually an adult. She's
Lainey's
like
15,
14.
At the beginning of the book, and then there's a time skip.
Yeah, there's a 7-year time skip.
But how powerless she is in that, because of that family bond and that whole like abusive thing, just made my skin crawl. And of course it's supposed to, but it does make reading it extremely unpleasant, those parts at least.
I would agree with that. It is kind of bone chilling, if you'll pardon the pun. But that's not an issue for the entire book. I won't say more.
No, and even then, like, being upset by something that's supposed to upset me is fine.
Yeah, that's different from being upset by something that is upsetting but isn't supposed to upset you.
Right?
Yeah.
That was not
it's just unpleasant. It's frankly unpleasant, but it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on from unpleasant things.
Yeah. Oh, so we do see Lainey grow as a necromancer. She starts off at the beginning of the book being fairly novice, but this might surprise you. She gets better at it as the book continues. And I really loved the relationship. We're using necromancers plural. She's actually the only one
that we're aware of. Yeah.
Okay, that we see, but that even in
who is still living.
Yeah, we do see. But it's kind of a plot point that Lainey comes from a family of necromancers that also hasn't had a necromancer in 100 years or more, a very long time. So she's the first one in a long ass time trying to teach herself, basically, with help from a belligerent ghost who's not helpful and also made me want to tear my hair out.
Again, it's supposed to make you want to tear your hair out.
I think it's less the abusive family members and more Lainey not sticking up for herself that bothers me.
Mm.
Or that made it difficult or particularly unpleasant.
Yeah. I mean, but that's part of Lainey's character arc is her learning to stick up for herself.
Yeah, but it took so long to get there. Like it's fine. It didn't make me not enjoy the book or anything. It was just extra shitty.
Yeah. I mean, it is rough to see someone be so like walked over.
Yeah. Berated.
Yeah.
But she does have her undead friends who are all extremely sweet. They don't all have personalities or consciousnesses necessarily, but the relationship described between Lainey and her creations is always so very loving.
I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book was that there's so much joy in it. Like she takes such joy and pride and love in her creations, and it's never a utilitarian thing. Even when she's creating something because she has a need, like there's still that aspect of you are my creation and I love you for it, which really comes through on the page. And that just makes it really fun and nice to read about, even when there's these horrible things going on in Lainey's personal life and you know, her other personal relationships are kind of fraught.
She's proud of her art, which is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I do kind of wonder. So this book is a very large book. Like I said, we have not the final copy, so I don't know what the official page count is, but the page count for this was 635 pages. And it did, because of the way that the story is set up with time jumps and things like that, it really, to me, it really felt like a number of separate novellas that were put into one book.
Or whole ass books.
or whole ass book. Some of them were shorter.
Yeah. I did not feel that way. So I have a not theory, but framing for the story that is a 100% big ol' spoiler.
Well, we'll have to talk about that in the spoiler section then.
Yeah. It's telling a larger story, right?
It is.
But I do think there is like a clear plot arc from beginning to the end, even though we are getting bits and pieces of Lainey's life in order to tell it.
I think it makes sense to have it grouped together in one volume, because as you're right, you know, there is an overarching story and there is an overarching plot. But for me, the individual stories, if you can, you know, break it down like that, also had their own kind of 3-act structure with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so I think they could be read as separate novellas or as a whole story.
I guess.
That's just my personal opinion. I mean, C.S.E. Cooney wrote it as a book, I'm assuming, because it's being published as a book.
Okay, so the one arc that's not a spoiler, because again, the necromancer main character gets better at necromancy over time. I don't think that's gonna shock anybody, but we do really see the like full progression of her mastery over her own talents, right? And it truly starts with her like barely able to do anything through some really incredible feats she pulls off at the very end. So that's one, like, if you didn't read the whole thing, you wouldn't get that complete.
No, but I think you see in series that are individual works, you know, that can be read as a whole or that tell a prolonged story. Like you see that kind of character progression, and it doesn't necessarily need to be constrained to one book.
Yeah, that's true. So I do have an argument, but it's a big old spoiler. So we gotta really quickly why you should read this book so I can talk about it.
Why you should read this book? You should read this book if you like bones, if you like footnotes, if you like a lot of joy, if you just like fun. This is just a fun book.
I mean, there are definitely dark moments. I would say go into it knowing that, so you're not like, oh no.
Yes, it's not all, you know, roses and lemon blossoms, but there's so much joy in C.S.E. Cooney's writing and the way she writes that it's just really nice to, like, it's a blast to read.
This book really made high school Lily wannabe goth happy. It's just the perfect mix of, like you said, you know, really, really sweet moments extremely emotionally satisfying, and then also, some guts. Also, there are some like really bloody murders.
A lot of bones. The bones made me, I can't overstate how happy all of the bones made me. The bones made me really happy. This is not a surprise.
But you didn't notice the mouse ears.
No, well, because I was too busy reading the book to look at the back of it. I was distracted by the cover and the words.
Mm-hmm. To avoid spoilers, skip to 52:10.
So what's your argument?
Conveniently, it's also my top bullet point for the spoiler section. We don't even have to reorganize stuff. Goody. This book is Goody's story.
It is. Again, I think that is not necessarily an argument against it being published in different parts.
Then you can say that about everything. Just publish the chapters as separate pamphlets. That's fine.
No, because
you can read anything in chunks.
You can't do that because it's not. There's even though there are overarching themes and overarching stories, and Goody is one of them. The how to phrase it. There are smaller arcs that I think constitute their own story that work within this larger framework.
I don't think that's a good argument for chopping it up.
I'm not saying that she should. I'm just saying that I read it as distinct pieces that could have been, and I don't even know why we got on this topic to begin with.
Because you think that this should be a bunch of novellas instead of one book. You said it. No, I have it on record. Word for word.
I don't think it should be. I think it could be. I think it when I read it, because of the pace. You had a note here about pacing.
I said it's like a slow avalanche.
And I'm saying
there's nothing about chunks.
I'm saying,
in fact, I think if you didn't read it all as one piece, then that would completely like break up that momentum. I don't want to say it starts slow, but it definitely like it just goes faster and faster as you read more. And like that sort of building of momentum was incredible. I don't want a chunk of an avalanche.
I think you still get that if you read it in pieces, but it's all a moot point because she published it in one book.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to read the whole thing in one day. Even I can't pull that off. It's a long book.
Probably could. 600 pages? I probably could. It goes fast.
I don't have a day where I don't have anything else to do.
Well,
you would need to find a whole day to read it.
Yes, that's fair. I mean, I wouldn't either because I don't have that time, but I think it is possible.
Not if you don't have the time for it.
Yeah, but we're talking about the hypothetical. You have the time, you can read it in one day. It's not like, 2,000 pages where it's just physically impossible to read all of that in one day.
No, but it is practically impossible.
In the real world, yes. Because we all have other things to do.
Well, Goody is the revenant who was raised by one of Lainey's ancient ancestors and forced into servitude of the Stones family forever, basically. Everyone is very mean to Goody, except for Lainey, because Goody basically raised her.
And was the only person nice to her.
Yeah. And Lainey's the only person nice to Goody. It's very sweet. It very much felt like they were the only two reasonable people in this extremely fucked up family. Actually, I don't think Lainey's father sounded fucked up. It was just unfortunate that because he was the royal executioner, he couldn't hang out with Lainey.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does deserve some excoriation for talking about how he left his children without any kind of attempt to have a conversation with them or bring them along when he moved out from the household and moved in with his
lover.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, it's true. He and Lainey couldn't have a relationship because he's the royal executioner, but I feel like he could have done more than the nothing we get from him.
I agree. I guess he's not a good dad, but he does not raise to the level of fucked upness that the other members of the family do.
If you're comparing him to Lainey's mother and Lainey's sister, yes, he's miles better.
He's an absentee father. Not great, but doesn't actively go out of his way to torment anybody except for, executions.
I mean, it didn't sound like he went out of his way to torment them. He
No.
just killed people for a living.
His like personality flaw is that he was like really flamboyant and over the top and liked opera. That seems fine.
Yeah.
Unlike the mother who does and sister who torture people for fun.
He also spent money it sounds like they didn't really have.
True.
But
I mean, not a responsible guy for sure.
No.
But not like evil.
Not at the level of unpleasant that Lainey's mother and Lainey's sister exist at.
Yes. So we touched on this a little bit earlier.
Are we done talking about Goody? Because I feel like there's more to say about Goody.
Oh, I mean, she was incredible.
Yeah. I really liked how we got more of her story as the book progresses. And we start off with thinking that she's essentially this background character, and she becomes more central as it gets closer to the end.
Mm-hmm. Finding out like what her original identity was that even she had forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find out that she had almost gone comatose before Lainey was born.
Mm-hmm.
Is like something that even Lainey didn't know, right? But caring for this child, like they saved each other. It's very sweet. And
then the way that putting her to sleep, if it can be phrased like that.
Well, the book does say, does use the word sleep for releasing undead creatures.
Yeah, but the way that becomes the main climactic fight, not because Goody is resistant to it, but because of extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very well done.
Yeah. Oh, not Goody's fault, but she did kind of ruin the romance scene for me. It's an extremely dramatic moment. Lainey is enjoying a festival, but she has to get home in time to sing Goody to sleep. Oh, that does sound like we're talking about a pet.
It does.
Lay her to her final rest. How's that?
Sounds very dramatic, but less like you're talking about a pet.
Yeah. But there are shenanigans at the festival, and Lainey ends up getting laid. And I spent the entire, that's a little bit flippant. She finally actually hooks up with the character Canon Lear, who she's known since childhood, and they have a very close relationship, and they've been pen pals forever and extremely romantic and longing and all that stuff.
There's a lot of longing.
A lot of longing. So they finally get together, and I am all about the romance plot lines, right? I was waiting for that the entire time, but we finally get there, and I fucking speed read through that scene because I'm like, oh God, she's gonna miss the window to help Goody because she's getting laid. That's terrible. Tell me that doesn't I have to get to the next part to find out what happens. A good, great smooch, whatever. And I did not enjoy that scene at all because I was so stressed out about her getting to Goody in time.
That is a little bit of a shame.
I mean, the fact that I was so concerned about the stakes of that situation is a testament to the book, but it did. It's interesting too because she does end up missing the window, but not because of the banging, or not entirely because of the banging. There are additional roadblocks. Yeah,
she does end up missing her appointment with Goody, breaking her promise to Goody, because she's promised Goody that she will end her
undeath
life and her servitude. Yeah, undeath and her servitude. But it's not because she gets a little distracted because of the banging, but it's not because of the banging that she doesn't make it.
That's true. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that she can be forgiven for being distracted because she's finally slept with this person for whom she's, held the torch for essentially all of her life.
Yeah. No, I mean, that scene should have been really triumphant, but instead I was really stressed out. I also love, so part of Goody's bespellment, her undeath, is that she must obey orders by any Stones family member. And most of the Stoneses just boss her around. But Lainey her entire life always made sure to ask Goody instead of commanding her because she wanted it to be Goody's choice. It's actually really heartbreaking when we find out that
that doesn't make a difference.
No, but Goody never told her because she appreciated the gesture, which is so extremely good.
Yeah, their relationship is just, I really love the relationship.
I'm glad that the book comes out and says like Goody was basically her mother.
Yeah,
because that's extremely true, and it's nice to have that like seen and
explicitly
acknowledged.
said. Yeah.
But I also love how Goody may be required to follow directions, but it's kind of like genie rules where she can interpret the request how she likes. And we actually see that in action during one of, oh gosh, I'm going to bring this scene up and only refer to this one little moment of it. But you know, when Nita gets brutally murdered in front of her sister, her enslaved husband, and their 4-year-old daughter. No, 6. I think she's 6 at that time.
Too young to see her mother brutally murdered regardless.
Yes. So Datu is throwing a tantrum, which I think is fair because her mother just got murdered.
And also, as we've said, Nita is not a great person, and Nita, consequently, not a great mother. She loves her. She loves her child, or at least I think that she thinks that she loves Datu, and she dotes on Datu when she's there, when she can tolerate it. But I don't think that she's a good mom.
No, so I mean, she's training Datu to be a killing machine, assassin, like thing, which is obviously horrifying. But I also think there's some like hand wavy fantasy stuff because like that's just the family trade. So
I wasn't even talking about the
all the murder,
training her young daughter to be an assassin.
Oh, just the absenteeism.
The absenteeism, the way that she kind of brushes Datu off when she decides she's done with Datu.
It's very, I'm going to use the word narcissistic, which this is definitely the pop culture-ified version of that phrase. But I think she loves Datu in that she loves herself, and Datu is an extension of her.
Mm. It really feels like Datu's a pet.
Yeah, totally.
She loves her pet.
Mm-hmm. I think I love my cats more than she loves Datu.
I mean, yes, I think that we both love our pets more than she loves Datu. But that's the kind of mother she is.
Yeah.
Not an A+ mother, but Datu really loves her regardless because she's a young child who, with all the capacity for love and forgiveness that young children have.
Not even realizing she needs to forgive her mother. There's anything to forgive. But that's not even what I'm talking about. How do you just casually bring up her murder? So I don't remember why she gets mad at Mock. I think because he prevents her from immediately going out to hunt down her mother's killers.
Yes.
Which, you're 6. So she orders Goody to prevent her father from hugging her, which Mock is a really good dad and I think handles that really well later. But Goody's interpretation of that, I mean, she does prevent it, but it's so very gentle. She's clearly not trying to hurt him, right? She just has to follow this order. And so she's like, okay, you're sitting on the bed now. Mock is a very good father.
He is a good, Datu has one good parent.
Yeah. No, I would say Lainey is also a good
Lainey's, I think I would call Lainey a very close aunt and not a mother, because Lainey gets really caught up in her projects.
I mean, so she's a working mom. What, she probably is working on her projects 10 hours a day. You can still be an involved parent.
I guess you could call her Datu's mother.
She's her and Mock are the only 2 people who've been around her.
That's very true. I think she has more of a hand in raising Datu than Nita did.
Oh, for
certainly.
Sure. Yeah. But they both spend a lot of time actually listening to Datu and actually explain when they say no, they explain why, and they don't try to hide stuff from her, especially like really crucial stuff like, yes, there are people trying to kill us. That is why we need to be careful.
Well, neither does Nita, but Nita does it in a traumatizing way.
Yeah. Also doesn't spend enough time to explain anything else with her. I just get really frustrated when, I guess real people as well, but we're talking about books, don't explain stuff to kids and then get mad when they don't realize how important something is.
Yeah. That's one of the nice things about this book, is that there's no miscommunication of that kind whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like everything is very clearly laid out. And I don't think there's really any miscommunication at all.
No, there's lies, but that's fine.
There are lies and there's omissions, but it's not miscommunication.
Are you referring to Canon Lear?
Yes, I'm referring to Canon Lear.
That's a lie. They lied. You don't omit the fact that you're leading a double life as yourself and your twin. That's a straight up lie.
It's a lie by omission, but still a lie.
No, because they said that their twin exists.
That's true.
That's a lie.
That bit is a lie.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that to be the twist, though.
Me neither. I didn't. Yeah. Yep.
I thought that Canon Lear was going to be working for the Blackbird Bride, who is kind of the antagonist. Certainly the bogeyman for most of the book. And I thought that they were going to have been secretly feeding her information or something like that. Not that they were actually the ruler of this country.
Yep. Surprise.
I feel like that makes it all the more heartbreaking when they end up married to the Blackbird Bride and then banish Lainey for like saving her niece.
Right, which involved attacking the queen. Like,
yeah,
that situation.
It makes sense, but given their history, it was very heartbreaking. It's
heartbreaking, and I have a lot of feelings about it, but I'm not like, wow, what a dick move.
No. I don't think it was a dick move. If I separate my feelings as a reader from my feelings like as not a politician or of any sort, but like as someone, if I put myself in that position, I understand why Canon Lear does that, because that's the political thing to do, right?
Well, it's also, frankly, the best way to keep Lainey alive. Like, I do genuinely think Lear goes out of their way to make decisions to keep Lainey alive and has already sort of accepted that they're never going to truly be together.
Yes, I agree with that. But
I think they misunderstood the situation with the Blackbird Bride. They thought marrying her would combine the two countries so the countries wouldn't be at war anymore. I guess they weren't technically at war. They were just assassinating each other a lot.
Under threat of war.
Yeah. Which is kind of fundamentally misunderstanding how vicious the Blackbird Bride is. Because the Blackbird wants to kill Datu. Because Datu's mother killed a bunch of the Blackbird's husbands. And like, marrying the king of this country is not going to stop that revenge thing. I don't know why. So when Lear is the king, they use he pronouns, I think.
I thought Canon Lear always used
they. I think they refer to the king as a he. I think the book refers to the king as a he.
I think the book refers to Eroliera as he. But when we know that Canon Lear is Eroliera, they go back to they. Maybe.
I think that's Lainey who does, like verbally, because she always uses they pronouns for them. But it's interesting to so this is not at all about that whole your lovers trying to murder each other thing. So Canon Lear, as a character who we find out later has multiple identities.
Eroliera, not Eroliera.
Yeah, Eroliera was the mother, I think.
Yeah.
The previous. They are in an order of priests who worship the fire god or sun god or something. When you become a priest in this order, because it's the god of many genders, all of the priests are they, which I think is really interesting. It's just neat.
There are some really neat world building details in this book.
Mm-hmm. I liked Niefling. I like the word nibbling too, but I can see why a highfalutin fantasy book would not want to use that word. It's a little silly. I like it because it's silly, but
I mean, this is not a book that shies from silly words, though.
But highfalutin silly, which is a different kind. Actually, no, you're right. Froofing and flooping and
those are not highfalutin fantasy silly words.
Yeah, that's true.
They're just delightfully silly words. Do we want to talk briefly about how Lainey learning what friendship means is really moving in this book?
I mean, should we just title this next section, Times Lily Cried? There were two. One of them was indeed discovering the concept of friendship. I mean, Lainey's been isolated her whole life. It makes sense that she wouldn't understand that these people that she spent so much time with actually care about her.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good example of something that normally frustrates me in a book, right? Normally, when you have a main character who insists, oh, these people don't understand, they're not going to understand my situation. They're not going to, be willing to help me or whatever. We're not really friends, even though
I must stay alone.
Yeah. Normally it really bothers me because normally the character has some idea of what friendship actually means and has some way of judging where they stand. And usually they're misjudging for the sake of conflict in the book.
It's totally arbitrarily. Yeah.
Yeah. It's generally very arbitrary. But here, because Lainey has been so isolated, because she really hasn't interacted with people for the majority of her life, not
and
even
the people who she have tormented her mercilessly.
And the few people that she's interacted with, namely her sister, horrible, her ghost necromancer grandfather, horrible, like her mother, horrible, her aunt, middling but mostly horrible.
Definitely not a role model.
No. So she genuinely doesn't get that they're friends and they would help her. And so that decision didn't bother me because it seemed so in character.
Oh yeah, it's justified by the world, by the story itself. I agree completely. It doesn't feel like a stupid melodramatic lone wolf thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And she was recently abandoned by Mock and Datu. Who were kind of her family members. I mean, Mock has obviously hated her.
Well, no, that abandonment happens afterwards.
I don't think so.
No, because that happens. She pulls Datu out of school and says, we can't go to Tan and all of them because they wouldn't help us. They wouldn't understand. And then afterwards, after some time has passed, Mock and Datu leave because Mock is like, you tied my daughter's life force to this undead dog and this is horrible. Don't you know what you've done?
I'm referring to when Lainey has to go back to the Stones Manor. I thought that was after that.
That is, but that's not the first time that Lainey... That's after Lainey realizes that they really are friends.
Okay. I'm referring to them insisting on helping her, even though she refuses to ask them to help her.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, same concept, just different part of the book.
Yes.
That's true. She doesn't just flip a switch and suddenly understand the concept of friendship. She has to adjust to it, which also feels very realistic.
Yeah.
But that was very sweet when they show up and are like, of course we're coming with you. That was wonderful.
That was good. So that was the first time that you cried. What was the second time?
Oh, well, specifically when Mock calls Lainey his sister for the first time at in the last page of the book or something. But so their relationship is extremely complicated, understandably so. Mock obviously hated Nita for, mind controlling him.
For very good reasons.
Yes.
And he kind of hates Lainey for a long time because she keeps him from killing himself.
Right. Specifically because she's too close and it's going to kill her as well.
Yeah.
I really liked that
But
scene.
he doesn't have that distinction.
No. But I mean, also just she's part of the family that has enslaved him. I think it's fair that his hate spills over a little.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's completely understandable.
But then, they raise Datu together. I'm not together, but both raise this child.
In parallel?
Separately, yeah. But he doesn't love how honest she is about some of the death stuff. And then, they're on the run together after Nita gets killed and Datu's life is being threatened by the Blackbird. And so they have to trust each other and rely on each other, but he still doesn't really like her. I don't know. By the end, they actually genuinely care for each other, and it's very touching.
I think this is a really good example of how C.S.E. Cooney uses titles to show the developing relationship between the two of them, or the changing relationship between the two of them, in a very subtle way, but impactful.
Yes.
Because he starts off by calling her something like enemy of my enemy or something like that.
Sister of my enemy.
So yeah, sister of my enemy. And then he moves on to saying, what, aunt of my daughter?
Yeah.
And then so when you finally get to him calling her sister, you feel like you really have crossed this emotional threshold.
Mm-hmm. And part of that too is because his native language is very cool. It's all poetry and it's great. And so they have very intricate naming or familial names. That was the impression I got anyway. That's why he was using these sort of complex phrases.
Yeah, I don't know if that's specifically a naming convention or just a way that language translates into whatever language we want to say that Lainey speaks natively.
A translation, or maybe just a cultural thing.
Yeah.
That other,
because all of
something.
Yeah, Kadib, all of the language that he and the other native speakers use when they're speaking English, for lack of a better term.
Well, we read it as English anyway.
We read it as English, yeah. Is very kind of formal and stylized.
It's all beautiful.
It is.
It's a language that just rhymes. You just rhyme when you speak in it, which is very cool. And most of their dialogue is in iambic pentameter.
Yeah.
It was very well done.
The way that Cooney plays with language in this book is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good book. I really enjoyed it.
I know I made a joke about not reading it in one day, but I did read it in 2, not even because I was rushing to finish it in time for the podcast.
For once.
Just because I started reading it and was like, but I need to know what happens next.
I mean, it is that compelling.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I almost skipped over a sex scene.
I mean, it's not an explicit sex scene.
There's some heavy petting. It's poetic and dramatic.
I mean, they're very clearly having sex. I'm not saying that it's not a sex scene. I'm just saying that it's not explicit.
There are no genitals. It's true.
Yeah. So this really doesn't necessarily belong in the spoiler section, but I'm not going to say you should cut it and move it because that's a hassle.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that the back of this book says that it is the first book in a trilogy where there's definitely room for a second book. I mean, there's no question. There are some unfinished threads, but I think that on the whole, this book is very self-contained.
Yeah.
And so you can read it just as a single standalone novel if you aren't interested in something in a long trilogy, because this is, as we said, 635 pages.
I wonder if it'll be something where, do they say the name of it? No. It's 3 different novels that take place in the world or something, and not necessarily
My guess is that book 2 is going to be Lainey going after, or is somehow going to involve Hatchet and Grandpa Rad.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Because that's the unfinished thread there.
That her dead grandpa possesses someone and wreaks havoc on the countryside.
Yes.
Yes. I was thinking maybe it would be Datu as a young adult.
Or Cratchit, not Hatchet. I don't think Hatchet
is one of them. There's Scranton, Nope. There are three brothers with exceedingly
like
silly names.
Scratch, Cratch, and Hatch. That's not it, but that's close. And I think the H one is the one who's the sorcerer.
That sounds right.
And the S one is the one who gets killed by Goody, really tragically.
And on accident.
The one who turns out unexpectedly sweet and carries the torch for Lainey. And the C one was the mean one who gets possessed by Grandpa Rad, I believe.
The mean, violent one, definitely. I didn't bother keeping their names straight.
I'm pretty sure he was the C one.
Okay.
His name started with a C.
You're right, though. That does need to get dealt with.
Like, I think that's going to be book 2.
Mm-hmm. It looks like there's a short story or novella or something about the very cool bartender who
really
Lainey makes friends with. Yeah, it was in one of the footnotes.
Is that so? Yes, there was a footnote about that. I didn't get the impression that was an actual story that existed that we could read.
I think it's listed in the back as like other works by.
I would be interested in reading that.
Well, maybe I'm making that all up and it's not a real short story, but I thought I got the impression that it was.
I didn't get that impression, but I would be delighted to be proven wrong. I mean, at this point, I definitely want to read more of C.S.E. Cooney's work, and I will be reading book 2 whenever it comes out. I don't know if we'll end up reading it for the podcast, and I don't know if you on your own will read it because it's book 2 and you historically don't read a lot of book 2s.
It's really long.
It is very long, but I will buy the second book when it comes out. I actually liked this so much that I bought the actual physical book. I mean, we own physical arcs, but I wanted to support the author, so I bought the book.
So there was one phrase in this book that made me have to stop and go, really? There are a few. There are some really delightfully bizarre words in this book.
I was going to say just one.
But the kind of crazy archaic phrasing really fits with the whole vibe. So that, I mean, did I know what they were? No, but it didn't make me like stop and pause and go, what? Unlike when Lainey refers to barking her shin.
That is a terminology that I had not heard before.
No,
it's
what
true.
A weird word, you might say. So I looked it up, and apparently to bark is a verb, meaning to remove the bark from something. So I guess it's like the
Which
word
makes
skin.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skin something.
Yeah.
I had never heard it used that way before.
Barking your shin would be like skinning your shin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd not heard it before either. I didn't bother looking it up when I read that passage in the book, but I'm glad that you did.
I had to know if that was a thing or not, or if she was just like doing some crazy stuff, which would have been fine. But apparently, yeah, that's a real phrase.
Does the whatever dictionary entry you're looking at say like how archaic it is?
Well, okay, so the top result is wordancestry.livejournal.com.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry for laughing so loud.
I'm not sure about the validity, but what a weird thing to lie about, right? This, of course, comes from the noun bark, which has been around since 1300. It's a Middle Earth word. Middle Earth? Middle English. Those are not the same.
Those are not the same.
Ooh, I do like that apparently in Low German it was bork.
Yeah, okay. So here, Merriam-Webster has it. Bark, entry 4 of 5, transitive verb, to treat with an infusion of tan bark or to strip the bark from, to rub off or abrade the skin of, bark to shin on the desk. This doesn't tell me.
You don't trust my extremely good source of random LiveJournal with a lot of mail order bride advertisements?
I mean, I used LiveJournal in its heyday. So
you know the quality of information there.
Yes, I know the quality of information on LiveJournal. I think Merriam-Webster is maybe just a little more reliable.
It sounds like they agree in this case, though.
But they do agree in this case.
Well, you heard it here, folks. LiveJournal, exactly as reliable as Merriam-Webster. Also, apparently you can bark yourself.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Our Linktree also has a link to our Patreon, where you can support us and find our show notes, and a lot of other nonsense.
A lot of other nonsense.
It's mostly nonsense.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye.